Welcome back to the Wizard Shop, and now we have an update on the 1999 red Chevy truck that you guys love the video on. And we've got more for you, no problem. Let's get started. So although we're not doing a heater core on this particular truck, we will do the heater core because we've got everything apart. The evaporator core is what was leaking on this. But speaking of heater cores, let's head on over to the Lincoln. More bad news. So the 67 Lincoln is pretty much ready to go. The 61 is almost ready to go. And just like always happens with the old cars, we went and road tested it, and something completely unplanned for, not even on the list, failed. There is two heater cores on this vehicle, one on the passenger side, one on the driver's side. It's actually in the wheel well. We're not going to dive into that, but it just started pouring coolant out. It didn't do that before, but once we get some road tests going, they would start leaving puddles of coolant on the ground. And what we found out was there's a little vacuum valve on top of each heater core, and those had gone bad and leaving coolant all over the floor. We can't give it back to the customer that way. I had anticipated that I would write the bill on this thing this week and be done with it, and the customer can have their car back. And I just had a huge wrench thrown in my gears. Let me show you. So right in this little valley right here, there was a vacuum valve that bolted on top, and vacuum would open or close and let coolant through the heater core. The heater core itself is not leaking, it's fine. But just the little vacuum valve was bad. I was able to find used ones on eBay for $3 and $4, and some of them $600 each for used ones. And I bet I buy those and put them on, and they leak just as bad as these. It said on the ad, no guarantees, used condition. So I contacted a supplier that this customer recommended, and they said, yeah, we actually rebuild those. Just go ahead and send us your old ones, and we'll take care of it. So I took both of them off and sent them to this supplier. And I just got a phone call. Crazy D let me know in the office that they called and said, oh no, those ones, we just got them. Actually, now we're looking at them. Those are the rare 61 only year model. And there's one guy left in America that rebuilds those. It will take him 4 weeks. We can rebuild them. We can get this taken care of. But they actually told me, they said, when this guy quits, we don't know what we're going to do with these old heater valves. But he is the last guy rebuilding these. So we'll get it done. We'll get it taken care of. But where I was going to write the bill this week, I just got kicked back 4 weeks. Now this car will sit in the back somewhere, and it's really sad. The customer's been called. They're fully aware. They understand. They're fully supportive of what we're doing here. But this is another reason why I can't work on these anymore, because they never leave. So now let's get back to the 99 Chevy truck. There are some vehicles in the 70s or 80s where heater cores were really easy. 1 hour and you could have it done. Really, they're not too bad on the Lincoln. They're in the wheel wells. They're a little bit tough to get to. But after 2000, the game plan for all manufacturers was as cheap as possible, as fast as possible. Serviceability doesn't matter. How long it takes you to get the parts out and fix them is not their concern, because that will be long after the warranty's over. So they don't care. And the proof of that you're going to see today when we take a look inside of this 99 Chevy truck. It is not the fault of the truck. It's not the fault of the customer. Nobody is to blame here. It's just the way that it was engineered. Once you take a look also at all the panels I had to remove, you will also see why my other mechanics did not want to do the job. Like I said, I've done 100 of these, and I had this one done. I had it out all apart in 2 hours. I challenged myself like I told you guys I would. I got it all out in 2 hours. It'll probably take me 4 to go back in, because you have to get everything lined back up. It takes longer to go back together. So just like I've mentioned in the past, what we're getting ready to see is just like walking in on a loved one during open heart surgery. It's that shocking. Are you guys ready? Ta-da! Everything's out. This looks very scary, doesn't it? It looks like someone's arteries are laying all over a table. I mean, it's just parts and pieces and stuff everywhere. This is a major, major job. And as tough as this looks, it's almost taxing on your mind, on these particular models especially, is that you keep taking panels off and panels off and panels off. It just keeps going and you still haven't gotten there. Even the best mechanics are stressed out by these jobs. By the time they get everything apart, you could probably take a measurement of their blood pressure. It would probably be pretty elevated. They would be pretty pissed off. There's a lot of older cars, or even some of the newer ones today, where the evaporator core has failed. And you see them driving around in hot, hot weather where it's 100 degrees outside with their windows down. You say, well, why wouldn't they fix the AC? This is why. It's possible they don't have the $2,000 or more to do this job. And the idea of their Uncle John or somebody that used to be a mechanic and he's going to do all this for them, nobody's going to do this for $100. Nobody even wants to do this. So this is crazy, but let's go take a look in the bed of the truck. It's even crazier. So as you can see, I filled up this customer's entire pickup bed full of panels and parts. Even some of my guys are working in the shop today. They're doing their own thing and minding their own business, and even they would stop at times and be like, how many more panels are there? I said, I'm not even halfway there yet. I'd only halfway filled the bed, and I still kept going more and more. So I'm going to go over some of these with you and kind of say what they are. Right here we have our defrost ducts, which sit on top of the HVAC box. We'll show that here in a minute. Here's our actual dash. This is the dash cover. And you can just hear it. That's the old breaky plastic. I've taken enough of these apart that I knew all the tricks to get it apart without breaking anything. But there were times where I could tell, I was even talking to myself, and I was like, I know you want to break. I know you want to snap in half, but I'm not going to allow that. It's really, really delicate work. But I got it out. I didn't break anything. Here's our instrument cluster. Here's our HVAC panel. Right here's our radio. Here's our A-pillars. Here's our headlamp switch. Here's our, this is what the radio and everything fits into. There's our steering wheel. Over there is our glove box carrier. Behind it is actual cluster bezel and also goes around the radio. These are braces that are behind there. There's the knee bolster. There's a cup holder. There's all kinds of little trim pieces piled up over there in duct work. This is our large instrument carrier. This is the big framework piece. You have to get all of this stuff off that I just showed you, and all that does is get you down to this big thing. Now you take that out, and once you get that out, now you can take out this frame piece, this steel metal piece. This metal piece is what keeps you from really getting the HVAC box out, but you can't get this out of the way until all of this comes out first. It's kind of maddening to think about how the engineers designed this. You know, when they had the CAD file and everything together, they probably thought, whoever gets to do this evaporator course someday is going to be cursing me. Oh well, what do you do? So luckily the customer has an older truck. I don't worry about scratching the paint or anything. You can tell the paint's pretty much gone on the bed, but I wouldn't have scratched it anyways. But everything's in here intact and non-broken. Also, there's the airbag. I forgot to mention that. There's the passenger airbag. The driver airbag is over there in that pile. Tons and tons of parts. So you get all of this stuff out and you think, okay, I finally can pull the evaporator core out. Nope. You're not done yet. Let's go into the engine bay. Once you get all those pieces out, the HVAC box is there bolted to the firewall waiting for you. But everything you need to do to get that out of the car is not even in the interior. It's out here on the firewall by the engine. You got to take loose, you have to evacuate all the Freon with an AC machine. No, shame on you if you're just going to vent it into the air. That's bad, you shouldn't do that. I got the lines plugged here out of the way. Both of the AC refrigerant lines, which go into this hole. Here's our heater hoses. Those are also unhooked. They go into this hole. And then there's all these little bolt holes with nuts and bolts and things that actually bolt the HVAC case to the firewall. Those are out here in the engine bay. They're not inside. So you're out here fighting and you get all these things loose. Heater hoses off, HVAC lines off, your condensate drain disconnected. Now you can go back inside and pull the HVAC case out without breaking the wires and tearing it up. So I've got that actually on a little cart back here, but I got a couple more things to talk about. A good friend of mine, Adrian, the Bug Ninja, you guys have seen him on a few videos. He actually stopped by just to say hi today, and he actually made a comment that I've heard through the comments on many videos is people that could do this work, they wouldn't have anywhere to put all the pieces. You know, you do this on the weekends, you get a little bit done each weekend. Can you imagine your garage at home having all this all over your floor and all over the place? Your significant other would be very pissed off at you. So where do you put all these pieces? I mean, so really it should be done in a shop. Luckily this is a truck, so we can put everything in the bed and it doesn't take up very much space. If this was a car, we would have to get more carts and everything like we've done on the Range Rover video I did and stack them on the carts. So we've got all these pieces out. We've got the Freon evacuated. We've got the heater hoses off, all the nuts and bolts off the HVAC case. And we finally pulled the case out and say, now I can pull the evaporator core out. Nope. More panels and pieces. Let's head on over to the HVAC case. So here is the box that actually houses the culprit, the leaking evaporator core, which is, you can see the two connections here that go into it. I'm not too worried about plugging that one because it's dead anyway. It doesn't even matter. So here we have the HVAC case that would take an average person hours and hours and hours just to get this thing out. And then there's a lot of things on here we're going to talk about here in a minute that also should be replaced while you have it apart, but we can't even get the evaporator core out yet. There's more panels. I've got the bolts out just to show you guys, but there is this duct piece right here. You take screws out. So here's some more stuff to go into the bed of the truck. Just wait, there's more. I'll have Mrs. Wizard help me. There's this bottom belly pan that goes by the blower motor and everything that's underneath where your feet are when you're sitting in the truck. That has to come off. More panels. And then there's tons of these little golden colored screws all along the case. You can see where they go all around this whole thing. This is one of those situations where if you don't get all the screws out, there's one left and you think it must be just stuck a little bit, so I'll pry a little harder. Then you pry harder and breaks the thing in half. You can really get yourself into a lot of trouble with these. I got all the screws out, but it's not ready to just pull apart yet. I got the screws off of the heater core. Here's another panel. The maddening thing about this is if you were just doing the heater core, you would still have to pull the box out because the firewall is right here, guys. Even if you undo everything, you physically can't get the heater core out. because it's sticking through the firewall. Now I've got the HVAC box. You can be rest assured that I will be replacing this heater core even though there is nothing wrong with it. Because you can also be rest assured that if I didn't replace this, it will be leaking in 3 months. I guarantee it. So we're going to set this aside. More parts in the truck. So before I split this thing apart and let you guys see the inside and what the evaporator core looks like, there's multiple items on this that cannot be accessed until you have the HVAC box out. And if we were just doing the heater core, we would also do the evaporator core. And even though we're just doing the evaporator core, we're also going to do the heater core. You do both, regardless of which one is leaking. We're also going to replace all of these actuator motors. This one right here was clicking. This is the recirculate door. It was making a clicking noise, and it was bad. There's also some on the bottom, these little motors. We're going to replace all of those. And you also check the condition of all the flaps and everything. Everything looks pretty good on this. The foam is maybe a little deteriorated, but that's just from age. They're not broken. But there's several things here that you do while it's apart. The blower motor, that can be easily done without removing the dash, really removing much of anything. So we're going to leave that one alone. So now we've got all this stuff apart. Now we can get to the evaporator core. I'll have you hold the bottom. I'll have Mrs. Wizard help me here and pull down on the bottom. So here's our pesky evaporator core that was leaking. It looks kind of like a heater core, but it's for Freon, a refrigerant. This thing was dripping that nasty green goo on the ground. It's probably a tiny little pinhole somewhere in here, but this thing is the culprit. So everything that we just saw in the pickup bed, in the interior, everything that I just showed taken apart was all for this. And it cost 150 or 200 bucks. You can probably get really cheap ones for cheaper than that, but we're going to go back with original quality. That is a ton of work for this. So I'll set this aside. Again, more parts in the pickup bed. While we're here, here's our cabin air filters. It looks like it's got a little bit of dirt in there. We'll put new cabin filters. And we'll go through and check all these doors. Everything looks intact. It looks like there's some dirt or something in the blower motor. We'll get that stuff out of there. But these little doors and things, you have to be really careful. You start yanking and pulling stuff apart, you'll snap these doors. Just like I mentioned a little bit ago, everything on here that's plastic is begging, please break me. I would love to break right now. So you have to be very careful. Here's another motor we're going to be replacing. There's 3 or 4 of them on here. Look at all this, guys. It looks like a truckload of parts, just like a dump truck dumped a bunch of parts in here. There's just so many parts. If you're kind of a novice mechanic, what can happen here is that you got it apart and you can't figure out how to get it back together. There are so many little pieces and parts that some of them, if you don't get the order correct in which they get reassembled, you'll get halfway through it and go, oh crap, I have to take it all back apart again because I forgot to get these pieces put in. Take pictures. I actually did while I was taking this apart. I saw some wiring, some connectors, and I told myself, you're not going to remember that. So I ripped my phone out and started snapping pictures so when I go back together, I can say, how did that go? I can zoom in and go, oh, okay, so I see now how that goes. I teach that to my mechanics here. Sometimes they say, I forgot how this went, and I say, did you take pictures? Oh, I forgot, and I say, shame on you. You should always take pictures. We can also look it up on our computer system here. We have Identifix. We also have Mitchell 1 that we use here. It shows how everything goes back together, but it's very, very much time consuming compared to just looking at your phone real fast. So now you can see why nobody wants to do this job for 200 bucks or 50 bucks or 100 bucks. Joe Schmo down the street is not going to do this for 50 bucks because he can be like, oh hell no, I ain't touching that. You also now see why a lot of people are driving around in hot weather with their windows down, because this has to happen just to fix their air conditioner. There's people that have heater cores that are dripping onto their floor and they bypass them. Like Mrs. Wizard, you had one, what was it, your Blazer?
Yeah, it was on a vacation. We bypassed it so I could get home and get it fixed at home for cheaper.
Yeah. You really don't want to do that if it's 0 degrees outside. I mean, how are you going to stay warm? I guess you can get one of those little plug-in cigarette lighter heaters. I don't even know that they work that well, but either the heater core or the evaporator core, this all has to be done. Now, in the 2005 Dodge Rams or some of the newer trucks, you don't even have to do 25% of this teardown. You unbolt a few things, take a few things loose, and just tilt the entire dash out 25 or 30 degrees, and you can reach in there and get the box out. But that's not the case. When they designed these early 2000 Chevys, it's really difficult. They must have heard a lot of flack from the design and made the change. Some of the newer Chevy trucks aren't this bad, but this is in the era where it's really bad. I've had people tell me these old 2000 Chevy trucks are the easiest trucks to work on. They are, except for the heater core or the evaporator core. They are almost the hardest. I keep saying early 2000s, this is also included, it's a 99. The hardest heater core that I've done is the early 2000s F-150s. It's like this in double. I mean, it's way more than even this. It's crazy. I will do this one, and I'll take care of this customer. They're a very good customer to deal with. We very likely won't take on this for just your older domestic vehicle because, like you saw in the video, my mechanics don't want to work on this. They don't want to do this. Not on an older truck where everything could break. And I don't have time to line these up and keep doing them. I have to run the shop. So we'll get this guy taken care of. But the reality is, most people don't want to spend the money to get all this done. They're like, no, park it outside. I'm not doing this. And I really don't get to do that many of them anyway. But if we get some more, I'll recommend to my friend who's in a different town who works on just domestic vehicles. And they do just as good as work. They'll get you taken care of. But this was kind of a challenge for me. Can I do it again? I've done 100 of them now. I've done 101, or at least 100 I still have to put it all back together. We got all the new parts here. I'll start reassembling this and get this truck done and out the door and have a happy customer. Also, before this goes all back together, I'll fix the horn wiring. Like I mentioned in the first video, I'll run a new wire. Right now is a very easy time to run a wire up through there, wired in, and the horn's fixed. A few people have commented that I shouldn't leave the old wire in there. Again, no one's going to pay me 6 hours to pull apart the whole harness and drag all that out of the vehicle and go through and look through hundreds of wires to find out where it was. No one's going to pay for that. Now, it's a good idea, but like I've mentioned, if you're not paying, I'm not working. I'm not going to do it. So, and honestly, on this old of a vehicle, I really don't want to pull the entire main harness out of your vehicle. There's so much that could go wrong. So I definitely wanted to give you guys a heads up on this video and show you just how bad and why my other mechanics didn't really want to do this job. It's not a thing about lack of ability, it's about liability. They feel uncomfortable that they could take this much apart and guarantee it'll go back perfect because it's so old. Again, not about ability, it's about age. So if you're curious what kind of tools I used to get this dash out, or really that we use in the shop, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. So make sure to hit the subscribe button because, Mrs. Wizard, I just got another car.
Oh, really?
Another one. Hit the subscribe button, guys, so you can see it. Thanks for watching.